Right, massive game on Monday night, but I think there's a few key bits of information that everyone who's kind of been talking about it seems to be missing out. So there's going to be kind of two videos in one in this one. There's going to be kind of like my preview of the Newcastle-Liverpool game. I'm going to talk about sort of Liverpool strengths, weaknesses, our sort of strengths and weaknesses, but then I'm also going to talk about who I think's actually going to win the title this year. And I think what I have to say about Liverpool leads into who I think will win the title this year. So I'm going to try to get through this video quickly because obviously it is two videos in one and there's football on today and I don't want to spend all day editing and I just kind of want to be able to watch the football. So I'm going to try and probably speak really fast and just get through everything really quick. But really quickly, if you haven't already hit subscribe, please do hit subscribe. There is going to be a £50 giveaway on this video as well. So if you are interested in that, stick around till the end for that. But I'm going to get into the Newcastle-Liverpool game. So for the game on Monday night, everyone has been speaking, like I've seen journalists, you know, Keith Downey, Craig Hope as well, who's someone who's generally very negative about Newcastle, but I've also seen like content creators as well. Everyone has been saying that they think Newcastle are going to get a result from this game, and obviously I'm all for positivity for Newcastle. Now I kind of said on my last members only video, and obviously quickly plugging the memberships if you want to sign up to the memberships to see that, but I said on my last members video that a part of why I wanted to make this channel was for, you know, having a more positive message around Newcastle, because I think a lot of journalists and content creators have had a very negative message about Newcastle for a long time, so I wanted to speak more positively because I believe that we're on a positive track. So I am all for positivity surrounding Newcastle in general. But despite me trying to be positive a lot of the time, for this game, I don't think I'm as confident as everyone else is. And I'm not just being negative for the sake of it, but I can give you the reasons as to why, because I obviously completely see the whole 12th man thing. Like I see how big of an occasion this game is going to be. You know, right now there's a massive, almost like, I guess, rivalry. Liverpool fans will try to pretend that there's not, but there is, you know, it's been non-stop talk for the whole of the summer, the whole Isak saga. So like, you know, this is kind of, it is a very heated game, a heated time for this game to happen. You know, I completely get first home game, always mad, under the lights, like the atmosphere is going to be absolutely insane, and the 12th man could be the difference. I can see that. I can completely see why people are thinking that. But the other point that a lot of people are making, a lot of people are talking about how Liverpool essentially can't defend, and they are weak defensively, but people are bringing up that Semenyo goal about how he ran through the entire defense, and people are talking about how sort of like weak Liverpool are on transition, and then obviously looking at, you know, their inability to sort of deal with pace. So obviously like pace, transition, you look at that, and that's basically our strengths at the moment. Like we have just all pace in our front three. We're really good on transition. So people are looking at that and thinking we have a genuine chance here. The issue with that being that first game wasn't really a true reflection of Liverpool, because in that first game, and as we found for the whole of last season, one of their most important players, Ryan Gravenberch, wasn't playing. And obviously on Monday night, he will be playing. So as much as I still think Liverpool aren't particularly the best on transition, if you use that Semenyo goal to kind of justify why you think we're going to win this game, that Semenyo goal just wouldn't have happened if Ryan Gravenberch was in the side. Now, obviously, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I don't want to just kind of create this idea that like, oh, everyone's been really positive and I think we should be negative. And I do actually think there's positives to look at here, but they're not that Semenyo goal. The positives here are, if you cast back to the last St James's Park game against Liverpool, where it finished 3-3, and then if you also cast your mind back to the cup final as well, the home game at St James's Park, we consistently went ahead and were leading the game pretty much the whole game. You know, it went 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, 2-2, then they went ahead, but they went ahead when Trent Alexander-Arnold came on. Trent Alexander-Arnold made the difference in that game. We were essentially dominating the game until he came on, because he was the difference. He is the one that is able to find Salah no matter how hard you mark him, because his passing range is incredible. Obviously, Trent's not there anymore. And then, as I said, if you look at the cup final, I remember thinking that week when we lost Gordon in the cup game before, and then we also lost Lewis Hall through injury earlier in the week as well. I remember thinking, oh, that's it, game over, we're not going to win the cup final. And then if you cast your mind back to the PSG game that Liverpool played just before, Trent got injured. And during that PSG game, I'd gone from in that game thinking we have no chance at the weekend against Liverpool to Trent got injured and I was like, oh my God, there's a hope. We have a chance. Because that link up between Trent and Salah, and this isn't me trying to sort of like shit on Salah in any way. Obviously, Salah is, you know, a world-class talent. But I think Trent's ability to find Salah was kind of what made Salah get the sort of numbers that he did. And obviously, even if Frimpong wasn't injured, he's still not the type of player, you know, he's kind of wanting to get into Salah's space. He's not the one, you know, he doesn't have the passing range that Trent has to try and find Salah. Like in that cup final, I genuinely think if Trent had been playing, even though Salah was in Dan Burns' pocket, I think Trent would have found Salah peeking out of Dan Burns' pocket. And obviously that alone, that kind of does, you know, should fill me with a bit of optimism. However, it can't fully fill me with optimism because in both of them games, if we didn't have Isak, then we wouldn't have been in the position we were in to be ahead or have won the cup final. So there is the glaring problem of we still don't have a striker. So ultimately, in terms of like a prediction, I genuinely think like it could genuinely just go either way. Like I really can't tell which way this game's going to go. The 12th man really could play a part. The atmosphere is going to be insane. From what we've seen of us versus Liverpool before, you know, the lack of them having Trent to find Salah, that could play a part. But then also equally, as we saw last week against Villa, us not having a striker, that could play a part. Either way, I'm absolutely buzzing. I can't wait. The atmosphere is going to be insane. I'm going to be there. I've got tickets, so I can't wait to be there. It's going to be absolutely fucking mental. And the one thing that I think I probably can predict is a Bruno or Joe Linton yellow card, because they are going to be up for it. Obviously, as for me being there in terms of getting content out after the game, like a match reaction and stuff, like I'm going to be recording at the game, but match reaction I might struggle to get out for a few days because I'm working a lot, and then also I'm probably just going to have to time it with the Champions League draw. So it'll probably just be kind of like, again, 2 videos in one, where it'll be Champions League draw, match reaction, and it might even be like a match preview for the Leeds game as well. Ultimately, for those of you that like the chance to win things, hit the bell, because that one is also probably going to have a giveaway on, because you don't want to get to the video way too late because you haven't hit the bell, and then you'll have to predict 9-5 Nick Pope first goal scorer because someone's already got the prediction that you want. Now anyway, obviously everything that I just said about Liverpool there, obviously the whole Trent thing, that sort of slightly leads into who I think is going to win the title. And obviously the way that I'm kind of talking about Liverpool there, you can probably assume that I'm not thinking that it's going to be the Liverpool that wins the title this season. You know, everyone's been going on about how, you know, amazing of a window they've had, all the money that they've spent, but also you've got to take into account the players that they've sold. And I think overall, when you look at Liverpool, I don't think they are actually in a stronger position than they were last year. I think I would potentially actually argue they're in a weaker position than they were last year. So if we look at the kind of signings that they've made, I'm going to go a little bit deeper in on this so you can actually kind of see what I'm talking about. So obviously I mentioned how Salah massively thrives off Trent's ability to find him anywhere, and obviously Frimpong doesn't really offer that. Frimpong has his own skills. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but he doesn't offer what Trent offered. And I think if anything, Frimpong could potentially be a little bit of a detriment to Salah's game, not, you know, the massive strength that Trent provided to Salah's game. And if we look at other signings as well, we look at left back. I know obviously Robertson's still there, but if we look at who they're actually trying to play as their first team left back, it's Kerkez. If you look at Robertson from last season anyway, he was sort of looking like someone who's on a bit of a decline, which is potentially why they've brought in Kerkez. But one of the main strengths of Robertson was experience, and that's not one of the strengths that Kerkez has. You know, Kerkez is a great player. I'm not saying he's not a great player, but one thing that he really does lack is experience, and you could see that in Liverpool's first game. You know, Kerkez was kind of, you know, diving into tackles where he shouldn't have been. I think he got a yellow card, which was a yellow card that he really didn't need to get. And then obviously if we look at other positions where they've replaced players, like, you know, the players that they've lost, obviously rest in peace Jota. I almost don't really want to analyze it from a footballing standpoint. Obviously it's so much more of a loss for Liverpool than a footballing loss, in the sense that, you know, it's a massive loss just on a humanitarian level. Like, it's, you know, absolutely heartbreaking. Obviously from the context of this, we are talking about football, so just to analyze it from a footballing standpoint, obviously that is a massive loss for Liverpool, because obviously there is all the talk about Isak, but, you know, they haven't actually got 2 strikers at the moment. They've literally just got Ekitike. Ekitike is, you know, a like-for-like sort of replacement for Nunes, probably a better replacement for Nunes, so that seems like an improvement. Then if you look at them losing Luis Diaz, they've swapped Luis Diaz for like a number 10, which again, you know, it's sort of like in the same way as like Frimpong, in that, like, it's, you know, it's a good player versus an incredible player, but like in terms of the system that they had that obviously worked, they won the title, he isn't part of that system. You know, he's not a like for like kind of replacement. So with that inevitably comes like a system change and like adaptation that has to come into place. They obviously have lost that strength and depth on the left side. Not that Gakpo can't do a good job there. Gakpo is another great player, but I think, you know, I would personally have said I think Luis Diaz was a better player than Gakpo. Obviously, Luis Diaz was 29 and they got offered 70 million for him, and Gakpo is like 26, I think. So from a business standpoint, it's a, you know, it's a decision that had to be made, and I completely understand it. But from a footballing standpoint, it doesn't feel like Liverpool have got stronger, at least not yet, at least not until they really nail the system where Wirtz fits into that system perfectly. And then, you know, the last kind of point, which kind of brings us back around to sort of the first point about Salah and the whole Trent link up and stuff like that. Salah is also getting old now. So with him having lost that link up from Trent, and I'm not saying Salah's not still a world-class player, like he obviously scored in the last game, but I do genuinely believe that Salah's not going to have the season that he had last season. And I know everyone says this almost every season. I think people said it last season, and then he went on to be incredible. But yeah, I've at least sort of given some reasons why I don't think Salah's going to have as good a season this season. This is potentially probably why they maybe need to sign an Isak, because if they sign an Isak, it kind of means that if they, you know, are to move like an Ekitike or even potentially Isak out onto the left side at times. It gives them, you know, that kind of strength in depth that they've lost through Luis Diaz. It means that they'll probably replace some of the goals that I think Salah might fall off with this season. But yeah, that's basically why I don't think Liverpool are going to win the title. And then moving on to, you know, other teams that I think are potential title contenders, you've got Man City and you've got Arsenal. I don't really think that I put anyone else in that bracket. But for me, I don't think it's going to be Man City. I think they've made too many changes. They've signed, you know, new attackers, basically an entire new midfield, new defenders, new goalkeeper. Like, there's so much change in their team that I think they almost feel like they're in, like, you know, year one of a new project, if that makes sense. So then that brings us on to Arsenal, who I do think are going to win the title. I think finally they're not going to finish second. And I want to preface, before I go into explaining why, I want to preface that I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now, and I have the receipt to show it because I actually sent to one of my best mates who is an Arsenal fan. I actually sent to him a couple of weeks ago, Arsenal are going to win the league this season. I also had a commenter from an old video of mine where I said that Eddie Howe is better than Arteta, and one of the commenters on there obviously was an Arsenal fan. He came back to that video to sort of try and give, you know, us some shit whilst we were going through all the transfer problems and stuff. And I don't know where that comment is because I can't find it now, but I'm sure if one of you want to go and find it, it'll be there somewhere. It could potentially have been on TikTok, actually, I'm not sure. It's either on the YouTube video or on a TikTok clip of that video. It's on one of the two. Don't know where it is. On that comment a couple of weeks ago, I replied to him saying, a lot of people seem to think that I hate Arsenal because of, you know, me saying I didn't like Arteta. I don't hate Arsenal at all. I just don't like Arteta. I actually, as I said, I think Arsenal are going to win the title this season. And my reasons for that being are essentially kind of the opposite to what I've just basically explained about Liverpool and Man United. The signings that Arsenal have made look like they're in the final stages of a project, not kind of like a transitional or new stages of a new project, or it just feels like they've signed players that perfectly fit the roles that they've been trying to have them players do beforehand, but the players that they had there beforehand weren't doing them that well. So to quickly go through them, they've signed Zubimendi, who is basically just like a better version of Thomas Partey, I think. In terms of what Arsenal wanted him to do, I think he's just a better version of that. Better at reading the game, better at breaking up play, and better at just sort of like controlling possession. Thomas Partey was a bit more of like a slightly technical but less physical Joe Linton, in that he was still quite physical. He would still use his physicality to progress the ball up the field, but he's also a bit more technical than Joe Linton is. But I just think that Zubimendi, for what Arsenal need in that position, he is better for that role. And they've obviously signed Madueke, they've got this Max Dowman kid coming through, and they've obviously got Nwaneri that started to come through from last season. So from that, they've kind of now actually got cover for Saka at right wing, so they don't have to run him into the ground, which means they should be able to keep him pretty fresh for the big games and should be able to actually utilise Saka to his full potential. So just how I said Salah, I think, might drop off this season, I think Saka's going to thrive this season. Obviously, providing that this injury that he got at the weekend isn't a big one. But then also what Madueke offers is he can also play on the left side, which annoyingly Adam Cleary has now made a video out which explains exactly why that's important. So instead of me going into full depths on that, just go and watch his video instead, because he's beaten me to it now, annoyingly, because I've been too busy focusing on the Isak crap. But to sum it up, essentially all of Arsenal's attack was very predictable and all came down the right side through Saka and Odegaard. So essentially, to stop Arsenal, all you had to do was just double up on them, which would obviously leave a ton of space over on the left side. And the problem was that you didn't really have any kind of creative left winger at Arsenal. Trossard kind of is a bit, but Trossard is like a very good level of it, but he's not an elite level of it. Madueke is again probably a very good level of it, but not an elite level of it. But Eze, who they've signed, is an elite level of it. And obviously, I have completely skipped over Martinelli there, and that's because Martinelli is not a footballer. And what I mean by that, obviously, he's 1,000 times better at football than I could ever be. But what I mean is that Martinelli is very much like a Miguel Almiron. Martinelli, you know, has had good seasons, scoring a lot of goals because of kind of what I just explained. My defenses would basically just double up on Saka and leave themselves exposed on Martinelli's side. But what Martinelli cannot do, which is pivotal to how Arsenal play, is actually play football. What Martinelli does is Martinelli dribbles with his head down the whole time and just runs really fast in one direction and just jinks in and out and dribbles. That's what he is. He's a dribbler. That's all he can do. He cannot, and this is one of the first things that many people are meant to learn when they become a professional footballer, he cannot dribble with his head up. Like, just watch him when he does it. And Almiron was the same. They really struggle to dribble and look up to where they should be passing the ball, looking at how the player is developing to try and make a pass. He just literally head down, which is obviously like fine on transition, you know, if you are going to be the one that just runs it all the way and scores the goal, which was a large part of what Martinelli did on a transition, would just run with pace, dribble in and just score the goal himself. Sort of again similar to, you know, the only kind of strength Almiron had. And this is why, to a certain extent, and this is a little bit of a curveball, but this is why I kind of get a little bit excited about Alanga, because Alanga has that kind of direct pace, dribbling and stuff like that, but he can do it with his head up. He can actually see how the player's developing as he is doing it, and then it makes him more reactive to the things that are going on around him. He can, you know, link up play, he can pass the ball around, like, you know, it helps him make good decisions because he can see the players that are around him because he's not staring at the ball. So obviously what Arsenal need is someone like Saka on the left side who is very creative and can create themselves. And obviously we know generally that's how Arsenal play when they're dominating games. Like, you know, to break down low blocks, they would rely purely on Saka and Odegaard. And obviously Martinelli offers basically nothing in terms of creativity towards breaking down these low blocks. And those are the games that Arsenal struggle with. Arsenal don't generally struggle against, you know, like your Man City or whoever else. They struggle against Brentford. They struggle against teams that can frustrate them. But now that they've got that other outlet on the left side, they become so much less predictable and so much more capable of breaking through these low blocks because they haven't just got Martinelli running with his head down into defenders. And then obviously, as I said, Madueke offers a little bit of that too, just not quite at the level that Eze does. And then obviously, last but not least, and this is kind of the main part of the puzzle that everyone has been thinking they've needed for a long time, they have finally signed a striker. Now, I'm not going to go out and say that I think Gyökeres is going to be amazing. I'm also not going to go out and say that I think Gyökeres is going to be shit. I think it's kind of a bit of an unknown. He was playing in the Portuguese league. He played for Coventry. Like, we don't really know how good Gyökeres is going to be in the Premier League. But what we do know is he is a striker and he did score 2 goals at the weekend, so he can score goals. And that's one thing that Arsenal have been really struggling to do for a long time now, and they've finally got the striker to do that. So yeah, that's why I think Arsenal are going to win the league this season and finally not finish second. But anyway, with that said, back to the Liverpool game a little bit for the giveaway. So same as always, the prize is a £50 Google Play gift card. I just want you to drop your score prediction for the Newcastle-Liverpool game and your prediction for the first goal scorer on the pinned comment. If anyone wins, I'll notify them on the video later in the week in the Champions League Leeds preview Liverpool match reaction kind of mess of a video that's all going to be kind of in one because I'm at work and I don't have time to do any more videos this week. And to be honest, there could be even more to talk about in the video because we could have potentially signed a new striker. So yeah, make sure you subscribe for that one, hit the bell because there's also going to be a giveaway on that one as well. There's just going to be the next video. I think there's going to be a lot in that video, so make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video and I'll see you on the next one.